Radio Book One Once About the bookstore for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is a co-founder as well as CEO, no other than Mr. Paul Baillie.
Hello, Daniel.
Welcome, Mr. Paul on Book 101 Review, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, hey Daniel, nice to meet you. My name's Paul Baillie. I am CEO, co-founder of a company called Shift Arcade. We started Shift Arcade nearly 3 years ago to be a sim racing lounge. Started here in California. For people who don't know what that means that we have a retail location with some high-end racing simulators inside that the public can use to come in, race their friends and family for fun.
For fun indeed, and thank you so much for sharing your fun to the world, Mr. Paul. Thank you for the fun indeed. And today let's talk about leaving the corporate track, your journey from enterprise tech to entrepreneur. So tell us, Mr. Paul, what was the final catalyst, the specific moment, feeling, or realization that made you decide I have to leave the corporate track for good?
Yeah, I think it was actually quite a while in the making. I've always had an interest in running businesses and being an entrepreneur. It's always something that's appealed to me. And I think, so it was about 3 years ago when we started the Shift Arcade, and I was I was working that on the side of my corporate job, doing it evenings and weekends. And it took a couple of years to really get it into a stage where we were able to grow. And so it was really maybe earlier this year, mid 25, where I think I just realized that I was doing myself a disservice. The time that I'm putting into my corporate job, I think could have been much better placed focusing on Shift Arcade and growing that business. So it was probably, just having reached that inflection point where I think my time was better served working on my own business.
Indeed, working your own business. That's be awesome, Mr. Paul. For so long, your identity was tied to a title, a brand, a ladder. How did you begin to disentangle your self worth from your corporate role before you even left?
I think that's an interesting question. Very interesting question. So I'm not sure if I had tied self-worth to a corporate role. The piece that I always enjoyed about corporate life was the ability to work on big problems and solve problems, work with intelligent people on complex problems, I guess. I still have the ability to do that in in Shift Arcade. While on the screen you're sharing our website, shiftarcade.com, and you'll see the store that we have there. We also created all of the software that runs our location. So everything from booking through the payments, leads, leaderboards, and gift cards, and also some software that actually provides a remote control service of the simulators themselves. So there's additional challenges that come from running the software company as well. And then this year we also started franchising the business. We've got another location live in Miami. We've got a couple more coming in Atlanta and Sacramento, and expect to be at about 9 before they get signed up by the end of this year. So there's definitely a replacement for the interesting complexity of problems that I worked on with a variety of problems, and certainly more in quantity, I think, of the problems. So your question was about self-worth. I think I feel the worth from being able to apply myself into interesting problems, and I have that ability probably more in as an entrepreneur and working for myself than I did in the corporate world.
Interesting, Mr. Paul. What was the single biggest fear you had to confront when making this leap, and how do you work through it?
There's probably two fears, if I'm honest, and I'm not sure which one would be the biggest. So I'll share a bit about both. First is just the financial, right? You will come out of a predictable but good tech sales role where the money was pretty good, had some good years, to move over and bet on yourself where you don't have a multi-million-dollar or multi-billion-dollar company backing your wages and your commission. So there's definitely a thinner period of time, right, when I'm working on the business and trying to get that to take off. And then on the other side, I think it's really having made effectively a bit of a leap of faith, right, to follow your dream and to do something for yourself. It's obviously a big bet, right? Am I capable of pulling it off? Will it be as good and as big and as hopefully profitable as I hope it to be? These are definitely unanswered questions. And while things are all trending in the right direction, there's obviously a lot more uncertainty, I think, from running your own business rather than being an employee.
Yes, being an employee to be an entrepreneur, how did you weigh the tangible comforts against the intangible cost to your energy, creativity, or purpose?
I'm not so much sure if I did. I think it was just purely a case of the role I was in most recently was not quite suited for me. So there was definitely a drive to get out of that, and it wasn't really a question as am I going to leave that role and go for another tech sales role. It was really, when I leave, I was definitely going to go and go into Shift Arcade full time. Some things had happened with the franchising business and the software business that just made it the right time to do that. In the US, you have to register federally as a franchisor. That's a long process, which we completed in June of this year. So for me to then, for that to be in place, really all of the main building blocks for us to be able to grow the franchise were there. So it was really a case of it just being the right time, if I'm honest. Now, one thing about, I think I've realized since leaving is, excuse me, I'm getting a bit of an echo back on myself. It's a little distraction.
Okay.
But yeah, one of the things that I've realized definitely is there's a big difference from an intrinsic satisfaction perspective, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm choosing the right words. Yeah, I always used to think quite a lot about work-life balance, right? And when you're working for somebody else, I feel it's very much like a seesaw, as we would call it in the UK, right? The kids' playground. You've got work on one side and life on the other, and it's very much kind of competing priorities, and you're trying to find a balance, right? But with one going down, the other one has to go up, and vice versa, right? So it's always a compromise. Whereas actually, I find that working for yourself, I enjoy working, right? I enjoy the challenges, I enjoy the creativity of it, and so I find it more now working for yourself. See how you see those kind of stacked pebbles by the side of the river. People stack them up. big pebbles and smaller and smaller and smaller, but they're all balanced actually around a core. So they're all different elements of the same structure, right? But balanced around a core. I kind of feel that that's a bit of an analogy for the difference between corporate life, where you're balancing competing forces, whereas entrepreneurial, where you're stacking these things around a center which is a bit more true to yourself.
Mr. Paul, on the transition and skills transfer, what skill from your enterprise tech career has been most unexpectedly valuable in your entrepreneurial journey, and why?
That's a good one. So I think, as a salesperson, I was always dealing with people, but also as a technology salesperson, I'm dealing with lots of people in roles and positions who are, significantly technically more knowledgeable than I am. So I've always been in a position where I'm relatively comfortable talking with people about concepts that I don't fully understand, but trying to distill the core essence of the problem. Right, you're pulling together a perspective from lots of different people to try and get a picture of the overall challenge that the customer's going through. And that's definitely something which is usable, in everyday life and entrepreneurship, especially. But I think actually one thing that's surprised me maybe is, I think just how much of that technology understanding has sort of gone in through osmosis a little bit. I was never technical. I was always supported, thankfully, by great architects and engineers, and et cetera, et cetera. But now that it's we're myself and my co-founder, so there's really just the two of us mainly running the company. I'm finding that actually a lot of the technical understanding and the problems that I've been discussing over the years really helps me structure and implement, admittedly much smaller solutions internal to my own business. Right, so we use lots of just point solutions, but we're tying them together with APIs. We're deploying little AI solutions. We're doing things that allow us to run the business as as a very small two-person company, and trying to use technology to make things efficient. And it's between my business partner Greg and I that do that. And yeah, so it's actually, I think, a lot of the technical understanding that's seeped in and has put me in a position where I may not be able to solve these problems initially, but I have an understanding of how to approach them, right? And then between myself, Google, ChatGPT, and a bunch of research, we can obviously can often get these problems solved and implemented.
Mr. Paul, your corporate network was vast. How did those relationships transform post leave? Who become your biggest supporters and were there surprising detractors?
Sorry, Dan, I didn't quite catch the first part of the question.
Yes, your corporate network was vast. How did those relationships transform post leap? Who become your biggest supporters and were there surprising detractors?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because what I do now is just so vastly different from anything that I was doing before. There's really no pass through for the I guess the professional benefit of the network that I built up over time. So certainly no detractors. I don't think I found anybody who talks down or is discouraging about what I'm doing. I'm very lucky to have a couple of people that I've worked with before, sales guys who have similar mindset, who actually are friends and coaches, right? So we talk to each other about side gigs and businesses that we're running, and hey, how have you tackled this, that, and the other? So it's always been very beneficial to me to have friends and colleagues like that. I would say in my past, I've had people who still are friends, colleagues, and advisors, but certainly nobody that I can think of that would be a detractor.
Mr. Paul, let's talk about on the entrepreneurial reality and mindset. The first win, what was the first small victory as an entrepreneur that made you think this is different and this is mine? Is often it's not financial.
Um, I think it was actually probably the first challenges actually that came up first that made me realize this is mine. When all of a sudden you are responsible for payroll, right? So we've got five guys on payroll now, and maybe revenue hasn't been as good as it was. That challenge and that reality, right, makes you realize that, hey, this is yours, right? This is your problem. This is your responsibility. Silly little things like, when we first opened, we were one of, I think, only about 10 of these sim racing venues in the US at the time, and the only one in Northern California. So deciding how much to charge for our services was a little bit difficult. I did an MBA when I was back in my 20s. Certainly remember studying price elasticity and a whole bunch of other concepts. And it's really interesting how useless all of that is in the real world when you're kind of faced with the big question of how much do you charge, right? So we actually, a bit more background on that scenario. We'd had a very successful soft launch where we'd presented 50% off to our customers, just to help us get launched, get understanding of how to run the simulators, greet guests, just really kind of warm up the business. And then after that, bookings fell off a cliff. We took a significant drop in the number of reservations and therefore revenue within the pilot store. So obviously you look to, hey, well, what might be causing this? And it's really hard to figure out, right? There is, it's not like reading a case study at a business school where they lay out all of the different factors for you, and it's really just all there for discussion. Do you have a good enough service? Are people enjoying it? Are people talking about it? Is your price too high? Can people find you? Are your online ads working? There's a 100 different things that may all contribute and probably do to some degree. So, understanding how you can actually move forward and make a decision. So I clearly remember, sat down thinking, oh my goodness, right? We'd only been open for a few weeks, and if bookings have fallen off a cliff, is this going to fail after its first month? So we took some action. We kind of planned out. We did a few scenarios as to what pricing would need to be if we achieved a certain utilization, and we ended up settling on the price that we have now, and have maintained that ever since. But I think it's probably more the problems and the realization that this is your problem to fix that makes you really realize that this is yours, rather than the victories, I think.
Mr. Paul, as a co-founder and CEO, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, so short term right now is I'm really balancing two things. So number one is to make each individual store as successful as possible. We've got 2 open right now. We've got 2 others who are in the process of signing leases, ordering simulators, and getting started, and then a small pipeline of additional ones who are looking to sign up as well, and hopefully open next year. So obviously I've got a big responsibility to make sure that each of those are profitable and working efficiently. And then the second part is to really grow the franchise business, right? To find additional new locations. We have the advantage of being in a new industry. We are the first and only sim racing franchise here within the US. And we've got a couple of unique things in the fact that we created all of the software that, that runs our store and allows us to be very cost effective from a staffing perspective, while still delivering a really good customer experience. So balancing those two are certainly my priorities. Long-term goals are, we're still relatively new. The company itself is only 3 years old, and we've been franchising for about not even 6 months now. So we're still at the start. Goals are really more about growth and growing the brand, providing a great customer experience. I've got some some dreams of being able to create significant and serious sim racing leagues with big prizes. Maybe emulate kind of the journey that was reflected in the film Gran Turismo, by doing some version of a from simulator to real world racing competition experience prize, something along those lines. So there are 100 interesting things that we could do and ways that we could take this.
Well, good luck to your goals, Mr. Paul, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a founder as well as CEO like you?
Well, I mean, at some point you just have to actually go and do it. This, certainly for me anyway, this was some business ownership, let's say, was something that had been on my mind for probably a couple of decades. I'm not sure if I can exactly pinpoint why, but it was something which certainly appealed to me, and but I hadn't done it. I think maybe being comfortable in the corporate job, having a family, other responsibilities. There's certainly many ways that life can just get in the way. But at some point, I think if you've got that itch at the at the back of your brain, you have to just step up and do it at some point. So action at some point definitely needs to be taken. So yeah, that's probably the biggest one.
Thank you for that advice, Mr. Paul. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, during my sales career, faced with many different customer conversations and challenges where we've got to understand that the customer's problem and then figure out how to match a solution from whatever technology is being presented at the time, and that's really quite challenging. But I think that once you strip away the technology, right, at the core of it all, there's a customer problem and a solution and some sort of evaluation. And there are a few really good books out there that really help distill down what is the underlying problem that's being solved. So one of them is called Cracked It, and it really helps define how to solve big problems and outlines some solutions which help you sell like a top strategy consultant would. So that was a really good one. There are a couple of others which are quite technical and specific to to technology. COBIT, COBIT, and TOGAF, TOGAF, are both enterprise IT, enterprise architecture frameworks. They're a technical read, right? It's all processes and alignment of inputs and outputs, and a whole bunch of other things. Um, but reading those actually kind of helps me realize, I think, that there's an underlying process and structure that you can bring to most problems, right? It's not like you have to tackle everything uh, from from the start every single time, right? You can use frameworks to help you get a head start towards whatever problems that you're solving. So that's something which I do, now whenever I'm tackling something new. Today I've been programming integrations between our own software and a marketing system that we want to do. I'm not a programmer. I've never done API integrations before in my life, but I can approach, in Chat GPT and with these other things with just general structure-based questions. If I were to do this, how would I do this? And it just helps put some structure on how to get through from the problem that I have to the solution that I want.
Interesting, Mr. Paul, and thank you for the recommended books. So, tell us before we wrap up our discussion for today, what is your litmus test for someone who is dreaming of making this leap? How can they know if they're truly ready or just romantically dissatisfied?
Ready for starting a business?
Yes, please. Being entrepreneur.
Um, I can't profess to be an expert, so I'm not sure if I have a litmus test for this, right? It's an experience which I've only worked through myself, right? It's not something I actually guide people through. Um, uh, Now, okay, so maybe I'll talk about my own litmus test, and maybe that's useful. Obviously, part of it is satisfaction, intrinsic motivation, right? Is the move something that you feel that you want or need to do, inside? Then just life and reality and pragmatism come into account, right? Do you have the time to do it around your job? Can you do it without affecting your day job? Can you afford to move over? Can your family take that risk? And then I think the third is, have you actually planned and considered out, the business, right? What is the plan? Is it viable? Have you done some financial projections? When we first started, we did some online surveys, which basically just asked, backed by some Google ads, just put it out there with a very simple survey. If we started this, would you use it? How much would you pay? How often might you come? And I can't remember the exact figures off the top of my head, but it worked out to be that if a third of the people who said that they would turn up actually did, we would at least break even based on what we projected. And there were a few other things that we did like that, which just really just tested the idea before we took the leap. So I think probably between those three things, they were my litmus test. The heart, I guess, the reality and the brain, I suppose. Try to poll all three.
The brain indeed. And Mr. Paul, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season, Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 Review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 second season, and my Food 101 in sixth season this December. Geography 101 Love Letters, Movie 101 Review, Music 101 our fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101, and second season of My Baby Podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Paul, tell us if the journey or in a corporate legacy is often about climbing. Now, as an entrepreneur, how are you redefining what legacy means to you? What do you want to leave behind?
I think it's definitely more about building, which is maybe similar to corporate. You know, I was never one to climb the corporate ladder. What was interesting to me was, you know, working with interesting people, maybe solving bigger problems, right? You know, that sense of building and accomplishing something when you help a customer define a good solution to their problem. Um, my goal now is obviously a bit more obvious, maybe from a growth and building perspective. It's each location, you know, being fun for our customers and profitable for our owners. And then if we look at the franchise system, I think we are really at the cusp of the growth of sim racing here within the US. So it's really to take advantage of that, continue to offer a good customer experience, develop our software to be the most cost effective and efficient sim racing business around, and to grow our franchise to 100 locations. That's the goal we had when we started. If it works once, let's do it 100 times.
100 times indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your business to the world, Mr. Paul. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, chef, and whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the big plug is we're definitely looking to expand. So if there is somebody out there, maybe in the same position as me, have been working corporate life, looking to move out or maybe invest in a side business, franchising may be the right thing to do. We have a fun and profitable business. So have a look at shiftarcade.com/franchise. Whole bunch of info on there and a way to submit your details if you'd like to talk with me.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Paul Baillie because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering shift like this to come. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
You too. Nice to meet you, Daniel. Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.